All right, can you guys hear me on this? Is it on? Yeah, can you hear it back there? Cool. All right, so we're gonna get started. We were talking about the history of APT. I think before we start, I'm just gonna give a couple of brief announcements because I think the discussion afterwards will probably go the whole time. So just a reminder, Saturday, we have a tour, wild foraging tour with Lady Danny. Can you turn that sound off so it's not echoing? Yeah, if it's muted or something, I don't know. And I'll figure it out. But Saturday, Lady Danny Wild Foraging Tour. It's really cool. I did it last fall. You sort of walk around and she tells about the history and the lore, and you look at weeds and which are medicinal, which are edible. It's cool, even if you're not into that kind of stuff. So, and it's good to see how you can do a different kind of tour that's not just history, not just a ghost tour, right? Anything you're passionate about that uses the area of the city, you can make a tour out of. So if you want to check that out, Saturday, it's $10. We have a few spots left, so go online in the APT store and do that. Book club, July 16th. Pam, what is the book? Is Pam here? Oh, there she is. My Dear General. It's about the relationship between Washington and Lafayette in honor of the 200th anniversary of Lafayette's tour of the 13 colonies. So we're not worried about September yet. We're going to focus on July, Lafayette for July. And then maybe at the end of the meeting, Mike can just talk about the July meeting. So we'll do that at the end. And all guides certified by 25. We haven't pushed it too much yet, but we're really trying to get all of our members certified by 2025. So our next exam is in September. We have a promotion going on. It's $25. Normally it's $25 for the handbook and $35 for the exam, which would be $60. So we're offering both of them, online handbook and the exam, for $50. So $10 off, sign up. A lot of you are not certified. I don't know why. You could probably take the exam without even studying and pass it. So especially if you've been a guide for a while. So we hope we'll get a lot of you, we're going to start hounding you if you don't sign up. So hopefully you guys will all want to get us certified so that by 2026, we have a great group of certified guides. And one last thing, in the newsletter, the last two newsletters, I had a link that Visit Philly published their list of all the things for the July 4th week, or I'm sorry, not July 4th week, the 2026, all the upcoming events for 2026. So take a look at it. You want to be aware of what's coming up, and they're going to keep adding to it. So take a look at that, just so you know what's going on with 2026, because there's so much, it's hard to keep track of it all. So they have it all in one place. All right, and we all know that Nick, and I don't know if anyone knows how to correctly pronounce his last name, Svetkovic, passed away. So I wanted to just have a moment of silence for Nick, who we all love dearly. Especially today, talking about APT, because I know that with the history of APT, he would want to be here tonight for this discussion. So remembering Nick, his obituary was in the last two newsletters. So if you didn't check that out yet, and if you want, you can make a donation to CARE International. That's what his family requested if you wanted to do that. All right, so we're going to turn to our speakers now. I think a lot of them do not need introduction, but we have Greta Greenberger, we have Brian Kane, and we have Ernest Rouse, and they are going to be talking about APT's beginnings. They'll each speak for about 10 minutes each. I wanted to leave a lot of time at the end so that others of you who were here in the beginning who want to share your stories, your perspectives, we have a lot of time for that at the end. So, and then you guys may have more you want to add towards the end, but I want to leave time for everyone to speak who wants to. Please make sure if you have anything to say, you use the microphone. So we're recording this and we're doing it on starting off with our great recording right there. That's what I'm going to do. So please, hold your comments until these three are done talking, and then we'll pass the mic around for whoever else wants to talk. And with that, big warm round of applause for our speakers tonight.
Well, I'm always glad to see old friends, and there's quite a few of you here that I've known for a long time and who were founders as I was. So, those of you who go back 10 or plus years with app, please raise your hand. Great. Um, I have lists of everybody, 36, 46 people who, even in the early years, became involved with this organization. Um, I didn't have time to reinflate these. Believe it or not, I made these for the river tour years ago, and I would deflate them afterwards. I have many of them, and I would reinflate them, but I didn't have time to do that. I'm embarrassed to say that I had notes all typed up and seem to have left them at home. So I am just going to ad lib. Um, no, I passed around a a newspaper clipping from 2007. So if some of you have a chance to look at, you will see what really started the need for this wonderful organization. But I thought I would start briefly by sharing my history and how I got involved with creating app with a few other dynamic people. And excuse me, um, I came to Philadelphia to work with the National Endowment for the Arts with an architecture program. And then I'm skipping ahead, but I got involved with a wonderful organization that some of you might have been fortunate to be part of. It was called the Foundation for Architecture. And we believe that Philadelphia was a museum of architecture. And I was responsible for the tour program. And in order for people who are interested in learning about Philadelphia's architecture and history and social history, going all the way back to the beginnings of history, back to ziggurats, all the way up to the present Philadelphia. We developed a lecture series, which was 12 weeks long, and people came week after week. It was a wonderful gathering, an opportunity for people who were passionate to share their love of Philadelphia and our history. And that was in the late 80s. And in 1991, I wrote a proposal to Mayor Good to run the tours at City Hall. And so went to City Hall, was running both for a while, which was nuts. And we developed a visitor center um, for people from all over the world to come and take our tours and learn about our wonderful city. And during all that time, I was involved with training new guides, educating people who wanted to learn more um, at, at how to interpret our city. And so I was doing that. And during that time, I got to know some other people who were equally nuts or passionate. I had I had one fabulous guide, Art Petrella, and I apologized to his wife because he was always spending time giving tours, doing workshops. And she was so grateful, she said, because otherwise he'd be dragging her all over the place to look at stuff. So I met lots of people. Um, and one of them was Ed Majors. And most of you have probably heard his name. If you haven't, Ed was an exceptional person. He was an assistant dean at Rutgers, and he started some programs for them. And he developed a passion for Philadelphia's history. And he went on to write books, develop tours, and he developed a tour program called Philadelphia on Foot. And so Ed and I would talk, and some other people. I could list off names, but it's hard to leave out people. But we would talk about Philadelphia. And then what happened was around 2007, as this newspaper article suggests, one of the people who was also passionate about Philadelphia and its history was Ron Avery. And Ron was a writer for the Daily News. No, yes, Daily News. And he was a bit of a curmudgeon. Does anybody know if Ron is still alive? Really? I have tried to track him down. I know he wasn't well. Well, anyhow, Ron started to write some articles being critical of tour guides and information that was being dispersed on um, buggy uh, carriage rides, on trolleys, and on walking tours. And he and I used to joke about that he should have written a book, and it says it in this article, to tell some of the misinformation that was spread around. Because I loved architecture, I always remember that we heard that supposedly you could figure out how old a house was by looking at the fan light and seeing how many spokes were in the fan light. It's not true. Um, um, and oh, I'm sorry, Sheila's not here because she was remembering hearing things about that certain famous people had dinner together and they never did. They didn't even know each other. But anybody remember some of those myths that used to go around? Want to share a myth? No. Oh, yes, of course. Yes, even today we still hear that people think Benjamin Franklin's up there.
It wasn't only tour guides that did that. I was watching a sporting event, and I forget what it was. It was probably the Eagles. Go Birds! And I heard one of the announcers, and they showed an overfly of Philadelphia in the city hall, and he says, "Oh yeah, and there's Ben Franklin up there." And I'm like,
Well, anyhow, the word got back to many of us who were giving tours and to people who were in the city government. And people were saying, no, I've trained people, I've taken training, I know what I'm talking about. How could it be that there are so many people giving misinformation? And then the word got to one of our city council members who is now retired, Blondell Reynolds Brown. And she headed up the Committee on Education and so forth. And she sent some of her staff people to go on some tours and reported back some of the misinformation and lack of information. Particularly, they were disturbed that more of our tours did not address African American history in Philadelphia. And so she, excuse me, she introduced a bill into city council, and I happen to have it here. And it don't want to read the whole thing, but it had to do with commercial activities on the streets. And it's tours of, on the public right of way in the center city, or sorry, in the center city tourism area. And the purpose is of this section is to ensure that our tour guides conducting tours for compensation on any public right of way in the center city tourist area have adequate knowledge of the geography. Somebody here loves geography. History, historic sites, historic structures, historic objects, and other places of interest within that area. By requiring that such tour guides become certified, this section is not intended to regulate persons offering or conducting tours in that area as volunteers, teachers providing information while sightseeing with their students, or persons offering or conducting tours on private property. This goes on for pages. And the concerns were valid. And it actually, I have the revisions over a period of time and many meetings that I attended and Ed attended. And Sarah, did you attend any of those early meetings with the, no. Anybody else here? Did you? You did.
Yes, I sat in with the meeting. We were a little bit well under a way of organizing as the APT when we sat with the city at City Hall, and we had some discussions with them.
It was in one of their government offices at 16th and Arch Street, like on a second or third floor, is where we had a round table discussion with them.
Well, there were numerous meetings, and I have notes on them. But so there was a big debate as to what department in the city government that this bill, this idea of training people, preparing them to give quality tours, and so forth. Who should be responsible for this? And there was some talk about arts and culture would go under them, or perhaps it would go under parks and recreation. And during this debate, during this time of forming this towards the final action of city council, where it was voted on twice and approved, and the final action was April 3rd. And it was decided it would go to Parks and Recs. And then it was signed by the mayor, Mayor Nutter, April 16th, 2008, to start this process. Well, during that whole time, we were approached, our little committee of concerned guides were approached by Temple University, by a man who headed up the School of Tourism and Hospitality Management, Gregory DeShields, and he came and proposed that Temple would take this over and would train us and develop the tests and do the observing and the crediting of this. And they were going to charge money to do that. That would go to Temple. And during that whole time, something else was happening. Do you want to speak about your, or Mike is here? I know Mike Tait would be here with the suit. Okay, well, Mike Tait, who's there with that beautiful child, and some other guides. Was Josh Silver involved? And who? Oh, and can you quickly sum up? Oh, okay. Well, basically, they were going to sue the city because they felt that by having whoever it was, whatever organization, um, tell us how to give a tour and what to say was against the First Amendment. Am I correct, Mike? Okay. And so they started a process, they hired lawyers, and it never got resolved through that. And nor did anything else that the city had done. Because no department had the money to lead this, nor was any department in the city comfortable doing this. So one day, Ed Major, myself, and a few others said, if anybody is going to recruit and train guides, it should be those of us who give the tours, who know the process, etc. And so we started to talk about forming an organization, and I'm very proud of all we did. I want to give them a chance to speak, but I could go on and on. My files are this deep. But I do want to remind you that one of the things that came out of our gathering was, of course, that we developed a phenomenal series of lectures and trainings and got actually how to give a tour and so forth. We produced, and this is the one that I use in order to take my exam, but we produced this amazing guidebook, which many of probably helped to do the different chapters or different sections. We developed a fabulous tour. For those of you who don't know about this, it was called the Great River to River, Vine to Pine, Rain or Shine Walking Tour. And I have some of the flyers we produced. And this was a 12-hour tour that started in the morning down by the Delaware River, continuing until dark almost at behind the art museum at the Schuylkill. And I know, and then we did another wonderful thing, which was and I have to truly give credit to Ed Major for really promoting and developing these different ideas. And even when he was not well, his last special project was for us to have Market Street renamed to the Avenue of the Founders, because several presidents lived on Market Street, and to have 6th Street renamed the Avenue of the Freedom, right? To recognize the various people and events and things of the African American community on 6th Street. So have I talked my 10 minutes? Because I could keep going, but I will try to answer questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Greta. I'm gonna pass the mic along to Ernest to let him do his thing right now. Mine is a little bit wordy, and I'll wait till the end.
Well, here's the way I see it. I was riding on a trolley on a very hot day. One of Blondell Williams' staff members was on the trolley. The guy was kind of fatigued. It was a very hot day. They were on like their 4th city tour. which most of you do not do. Mike Tait used to do it along with me. We call it the hamster wheel. 90 minutes around Philadelphia 4 times a day. So the tour guide was kind of fatigued, giving out all kinds of information. I got on the bus, the trolley at, what was it, Ninth and Pine, something like that. It was like one of the stops in front of the lady that had all of the antique stuff, Blendell, Blendell. And one of her staff members was on the bus, on the trolley, and they went back to Blondell Williams to the office and said, "Oh, the tour guides are giving erroneous information, blah, 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 blah," like that. So Ed, no, what was his name? Oh, come on, you, me, and
Ron Avery.
Ron Avery. We got together in the first floor. I think it was called Kavanaugh's at that time, where we first started meeting upstairs. So we got together on the first floor and wrote out a flyer and said, "Everybody, you need to come to this a meeting of the tour guides." So we managed to get Ed Major there. Greta was there, and a lot of other you showed up. And we said, we have to do something about this. So then when city council got involved, we had a meeting with them. I had to explain to city council that they were making rules on us that do not apply to people that come to Philadelphia. Their rules were going to be, if you are a Philadelphia tour guide, you have to have a test and certification. Not if you come here from Baltimore, Maryland, or DC or New York, you don't have to have the certification. That's not fair to us Philadelphians. So they finally realized that if you're going to make people be certified, do what everybody does. Everybody must be certified. When you go to DC, you have to, well, not anymore hardly, but you're supposed yeah, but you're supposed to have a license and certified. When you go to New York, you need to be licensed and certified. But in Philadelphia, they only want Philadelphians to be licensed and certified, which wasn't fair to us. So that meant everybody else could come here, say whatever they want to say, collect their money and go, but we would have to go to classes. So we got together at Kavanaugh's. We started having more and more guides come, more and more. I myself had a different a motive for APT. My motive was to get the guys on the double deck, well, it wasn't double decker buses yet, but on the trolleys that do 90-minute tours that have the correct information that they give, because they handle more people than all of us do every day. Today I did 4 tours, packed with like 88 people a tour, something like that. So I have to give the correct information, period. If I'm wrong, I'm fired. All right, that's the way it works with me. So my alternative motive was to get those guys on board, but they're still not on board. As you can see, as you look at this audience today, there's no one here that rides the 90-minute tour that gives the tours. And these are guys that are coming here as like a carousel ride in the summertime, and then they're leaving. So the misinformation is still going on. We need to get these guys into our meetings right here. I've been trying and trying and trying and trying and trying, but they don't see that you guys are the movers and shakers. All right. It's the hardest job in this tourism and the lowest amount of pay. I did 4 90-minute tours a day for like $100. You, all right, you guys do one tour and make way more than that. All right? And you don't even do a 90-minute all over the city. But we got together at Kavanaugh's and we started getting more and more people that had the brains to get this going. I didn't have the brains to get this going. All right, I was the secretary and everything had to be on paperwork then because we didn't have our cell phones and stuff. I don't think that was invented yet. All right, when we first started APT. So we put everything on 3x5 cards and had everybody's phone numbers. So we would call everybody and say, here's the information. We're going to meet at Kavanaugh's 1 week, 1 day a month on Wednesday for 1 hour. But we don't know how to do 1 hour. All right. We do not know how to do 1 hour. And then we started having lectures of people of the places that we're going to talk about, give us a lecture so we know what to say. Now, I tell all of my training tour guides, you have to go into all of these places so that you can have an experience to tell people what is inside, like the Mutter Museum, the Physics House, um, the Powell House, Christ Church, Alfred's Alley. You have to actually go to every single one of these places to have an experience to tell the guests that are coming. Otherwise, what are you telling them? You haven't been there, they haven't been there. The Mint, even the Mint also. We did the president's house today. I couldn't make it. I was doing the loop around the city during that time period. But the tour guides are not going into these places like APT is doing. And that's what we need to do more often. Now, as she was saying, we had the great tour from river to river in Philadelphia. This is the second one in 2011 here in Philadelphia, where it was like we had different breaks. Everybody that was a how can I say a docent or so in like the physics house or at the Powell House, they gave a lecture on their exhibits. So if you attend, you know what to say to the people as you're going by those houses, including the Pine Street Presbyterian, Pine Street Church, and in St. Peter's Episcopal Church and Cemetery. We've had lectures inside all of these buildings around the city of Philadelphia to know what to tell the people what's inside to get them to come back to visit these different sites to see. Now, here we started going with our agenda with the minutes. Look, it's not easy to start a club. Thanks to Ed Major, he knew all about talking about the how can I say starting up a charter to get this thing going. I, I knew about charters from prep school and starting little clubs and everything like that, but this is big. All right, this is very, very big. So people like Ed Major help us draw the charters. We had people like Mike Tait. We had Bob Skiba, Dale Connor, Judy Smith. And with these people's knowledge, because they knew the inside, they were docents inside of a lot of these different places. Not to mention, Ed Major had a lot of books about old Philadelphia, which were like coffee table. I think I got every Ed Major book. Coffee table books, because when I give a tour, most of the time, I usually carry artifacts with me to show the folks what used to be there, things of that nature. I also do a lot of African history inside of it, inside my tour, because when I talk about the Underground Railroad, like Henry Box Brown, I have to show a picture of a Henry Brown coming out of a box. When I talk about like the book we had just y'all guys just had at your book club of William and Ellen Craft, I show a picture of what Ellen Craft looked like when she was dressed as a man, all right, in order to get by. So carrying artifacts on your tour also makes your tour more in depth so that people will understand exactly what you're talking about. Now, this was one of our charters, one of our agendas that we had about the minutes of the monthly meetings, the treasurer's report, things of that nature, the committee reports, the communications, the events, and the education. Also, we had different speakers here in Philadelphia. Um, what else is in here? The handbook committee to start the handbook here in Philadelphia, because the tour company does have a handbook. I think Mike Tait might have helped write that handbook. All right, that wrote that handbook. Are you the one in there with Darth Vader? With Darth Vader when they brought the exhibit to the Franklin Institute. Oh, that was the other guy. Okay, that was the other guy before you. I can't remember his name though. But with this club, the Association of Philadelphia Tour Guides, we are actually educating the tour guides that already are educated, in my opinion, to tell you the truth. Because the people that are not here are the ones that are giving the misinformation that's out there. And it's continuing over and over and over and over today. It's hard to get good tour guides because there's no benefits in tour guiding. And that's why most of us are elderly because we got benefits. All right. A lot of us are senior citizens. So when the tourism goes down, we still got a check. But the younger people, they don't have a check. So it's hard to get these younger people in here. We finally got a Spanish speaking tour guide, which I'm so proud that we finally, after what are we like, almost 20 years old now? And, and we finally got a Spanish speaking tour guide in the back there. All right. Is that Fred, right? Or John? John. We finally got one Spanish speaking tour guide out of all of the thousands of tours. That's not a good average, all right, at all. because there are a lot of Hispanic people that come here and they really want this knowledge, but there's no one to cater to them. All right. All right. In closing, guys, um, we also ended up doing things like health insurance with APT, also tour guiding insurance with APT. And remember, when we started, there was no CUA program. All right, when we first started, we are one of the last national parks, I believe, to have a CUA program here in the United States. Oh, oh, I forgot what's the initial stand for. The initial. Say it again. Commercial use authorization, all right, which I can tell y'all the secret, but the national park don't really have a clue. All right. You can have a CUA card and be working for somebody else or whatever, whatever, whatever. Shh, keep that to yourself. All right. All right. All right. But this organization that we have started here in back in what was it, 2008, going way back then, and we've still been going stronger. We're larger now. Why are we not meeting at 114 up the street today? They're busy. And we're the people keeping them alive. All right, the restaurants that we bring our students to, they are staying very much alive thanks to APT. All right, we're bringing busloads of people to these restaurants, and we have to find bathrooms. That's one of our number one problems because you guys do nighttime tours, you do ghost tours, and we don't have enough restrooms for our guests after 5 o'clock. And that's one of our issues that APT can actually help solve. I really wish that we could invest in some porta potties where the profits go to APT. All right. $1 per person on mobile porta potties, only used at the time period when there's no porta potties available from Fifth Street or from 6th Street all the way back to the river. All right, things of that nature. Our membership fee is not that much compared to other places, and the companies actually pay for membership fees to the people on the 90-minute tours that are not here, which is a big problem. All right, because you need to ride some of these buses incognito and hear what the tour guides say, and then bring it back to the APT meetings and let us know. Because you will hear still erroneous information on the double-decker buses. I ride for free, but I can't stand on it much longer because I don't like the information that they're giving out. And everyone does not have to give the same information about the same thing. There's a million things to say about that same rock that's on that corner right there. There's a million things to say about Alfred's Alley. All right. There's a million things to say about Betsy Ross's house. We all do not have to say the exact same thing all the time. We just need to be correct. And that's what APT is all about.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Kane. I'd never imagined that the APT would be what it is today. My time period with the APT is very brief. It's from 2008 to 2011. And that's why I'm glad that Ernest and Greta are here because they can speak to time periods where I was not involved at all. I went on into a different profession, but I'm looking to come back into it. So if you'll excuse how formal this kind of sounds, that's the way my brain works. And I really didn't want to miss any information. I want to thank Marianne and Mike. Is it Teddy? Teddy? Tatey for helping to bring this about, and also the conversations that I had with Greta. So let me see. Okay, let's start. Well, I'm one of the founding members. I'm a lifetime member of the APT, and I'm a former carriage driver and walking tour guide. And I spent 20 plus years helping guide the folks to learn the correct history. I was taught the proper way to do research, to find out, go to the buildings, ask people who know more than you, and things of that nature, and not just take what anybody says for the gospel, so to speak. So I was pretty proud of that. Um, I grew up with horses in my family. My uncle had stables over in Port Richmond. My cousin Charlie had stables as well. And it was my cousin Charlie who started the Ben Franklin Carriage Company here in town. So when it was time for me to come into the business, so to speak, it was natural for me. I grew up with horses. It was natural for me to gravitate towards the carriages. Um, I heard a lot of the silly stories too, and um, that's sad, and that it's still going on even after all the fuss that the city made about it. It's still going on. Um, so it was around 2007 and 2008 that the former newspaper reporter and author Ron Avery wrote to Blondell Reynolds Brown and complained about the laughably inaccurate, hysterical tours that were going on in the city. The pun is intended. And it's wrong for that information to be foisted on people who have no clue of what any of the history is, and it's irresponsible for people to be charging people money, to be paying money for information that's not correct. Um, so let's see. So it was through Ms. Brown, uh, who, as was rightly so, was also concerned that not enough African American history was being told, as well as other groups that were being left out in the representation in the history. Um, when the city started their mess, I was really glad that Mike Tait, Josh Silver, and Ann Boulay jumped into the fire and got involved with the Institute for Justice. I spoke to Robert McNamara, who was the lead attorney for that case, uh, Tate v. City of Philadelphia. And he said that there was already somebody, involved with it. So then I just kept my hands off it and just followed the proceedings as to what went on with that. And I was glad that in the end, the city was really put in a position is to put up or shut up, and they weren't in a position to put up, so they had to shut up. But while Mike um, and the others were fighting that fight, I thought there should be another point of attack to try to get this situation remedied. And I agree with what Greta was saying about that the people who ought to be showing people what tours are all about are the people who are actually doing the tours. But I knew as a carriage driver, we were low hanging fruit. We were getting blamed for everything. And I took that personal. And especially when Ron kept harping on carriage driver this, carriage driver that. And I heard enough. And I finally said, this carriage driver is not going to stand for it. But I also knew that I didn't have the credentials, the reputation on the national park to be able to, or the skill set to be able to put together an organization. I had come across Ed Major. I had done a few jobs with him when he was doing his VIP tours, and he contracted me as a carriage driver to do some of his tours with him. So I asked Ed for a meeting, and we had just a little sit down in the tea garden next to the second bank. And I had expressed an idea of getting an association formed so that we could educate our members and eventually come up with a process where we'd be able to certify it. I had nothing to do with the handbook. That was all Ed Major's idea, and I don't want to take any credit from anybody else that had done any of that. Let me get through, please. Um, I'm coming to the end pretty much. Uh, Ed was the only one that I knew that really possessed um, that kind of stature to be able to do it. So he asked me, he says, so what part would you want to play? And I said, I would like to be able to go on and to try to recruit new members. and try to get more people interested. So I went around the park. I went around to the different docents. I went to the trolleys, and I met Ernest on one of his trolleys, and we were talking about it, as well as Joe Beckton. And I went to Ron Avery's house and had lunch with him and tried to get him more involved in the um, in the remedy. You know, you start a fire, maybe you want to help try to put it out. But it didn't seem to me, my only impression was that he was not really that much interested after he had attended a few of our steering committee meetings at City Hall. So, you know, not casting any dispersions, but if you start a fire, you can at least try to help put it out. So I'm almost done with that. I just wanted to thank everyone for you know, paying attention this long and listening to what I had to say, and keep up the great work, because it's the work that you do is really necessary, and it's enriching people's lives when they learn the true history and the people that played a part in that history in our city. So thank you again, and
As Mike settles in, I do want all of you to know that at some point, Lawndell Reynolds Brown, who sort of started this whole hoopla at the government level, became so impressed with our organization and what we were doing, because Ed would keep her informed of our different programs and tours and so forth, that she had a proclamation written up and given to our organization for doing an outstanding job. So it did come around. Just
Hi there. So my name is Mike Tait. I was a tour guide in Philadelphia for about 15 years. I worked for virtually everybody. I will not be answering any questions. He'll be fielding all my questions for this evening. Um, so in 2007, I was actually working as a tour director for the Trolley Works. And that's when everything came out. Now Ron Avery's famous 30 things that no one but him has ever heard. You know, I was like, I've never heard this. Most of the misinformation I heard a lot of times came from guides who got a little bit of information but was wrong. Like, I found out one of the guides for the Tri-Works was saying that William Penn became an Anglican at the end of his life. And I took her aside and I said, "Well, why are you saying that?" She said, "Well, because his baptismal font's in Christ Church." I was like, "No, that was brought over." And there was a lot of what we call tour guide folklore. Um, I'll share this one funny one where it's not wrong, but this girl, her name is Allison, lovely girl, incredibly naive, was saying on her tour, and this is what she was saying: the statue of William Penn on top of City Hall is 37 feet 8 inches. Can't forget those 8 inches. I had to explain to her why she couldn't say that. But first, I said, "Maggie, come here. Say that again." So, and by the time, and then I left the TriWorks. I was working for the Constitutional when I was approached by Robert McNamara uh, and Josh Silvers and Ambulay, and we were involved in in the lawsuit. And it was interesting because what I was told is that, of course, Ron Avery was a newspaper guy in Philly. So if you were looking at anything in Philadelphia, everything was on his side, and they were repeating everything that was being said. If you got outside the city, they were looking at you guys going, "What's going on?" And of course, it did get a little bit away from Ron because, of course, the city's like, "Well, we can make money off this." And then Temple University said, "Well, we can make money off this." You know, that's the whole point. You know, I've given tours in here in Philly without a COA. No one stopped me. I did 2 years of tours in DC, no certification. No one stopped me. Nobody cares, except for the people who are getting the money. So we went into right across the street to the federal court. One thing I think it was interesting in the trial, 'cause we kept talking about the 30 things that Ron brought up. Um, and our lawyer, Robert, asked, well, in all these times you've heard these guys say the wrong, give misinformation. Did you ever take any of them aside and set them straight? He never did. He just went right to the newspaper. And one little side note too, in the very early days, I think a group of from APT and a group met with a group in the city to try to figure out if this goes through, what's going to happen. And the city kept saying, well, we don't know. We haven't figured that out yet, but we still want your money. That's the quiet part out loud. So we went through. Robert was an incredibly good lawyer. And also, and to the point where almost as soon as we took to court, the city was like, "Well, we don't know what we're going to do yet. It's a couple years away." And the official ruling was that the law wasn't right, meaning that because the city had no idea what it was going to do, had nothing set up. It just had this law in place that they didn't know what they're going to do with. With they weren't going to be able to enforce it. So basically, where it stands to this day, I think, is the law is technically on the books. If the city ever attempts to enact that, then the lawsuit is ripe, and we go right back across the street. And for me was what originally was a First Amendment thing, but eventually became it's just a badly written law. But for a lot of people, and this is going back and going back to the days when Ride the Ducks was a bad word out here. When I would hear people say, "Well, we're going to get the guides to say the correct thing," not the Ducks, not the Trolley Works, not the big bus company, because there was arbitrary exemptions. So Mike Slocum could have gone to the city and said, "Do I have to do this?" They say no. The Ducks had enough money; they could go to them and say, "Do we do this?" No. So the 18-year-old kid who's doing this as a summer gig could spew all this wrong information. But the guide who worked for 20 years honing their craft and learning, would have to pay $300, would have to take a test, might have somebody come on their tour and say, you didn't give enough information that I feel is appropriate. So you have to adjust your tour to my liking. And when you tell people that, yeah, all of a sudden certain people would get away with it, then that's when a lot of people in the street be like, well, why are we doing that? What's the point? What's the point of this law if it's not actually going to solve anything? And I remember when Robert came to something, or some members of APT were here. Our lawyer Robert said he loved this, and he loved the certification thing because instead of a mandatory certification that was going through the city, it's a voluntary certification coming from the guides, and that was a lot more worthwhile. I mean, I think the guild in DC might be run by guides, and if it comes from us, we care more. I remember sitting when I was a tour director, hearing Mike Slocum, who's the owner of the Trial Works, say, "I don't care. I don't care if that's right or wrong. Just where's the contract? Where's the money?" A lot of them up top don't care, but we do because we're the ones that are on the front lines. Yeah, my only real regret though is that I was almost going to be on the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. It didn't happen, but that would have been interesting. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
So does anyone else? Does anyone else want to share at their perspective, at their story? Nobody has a story to share. You're all tour guides. Got one Jim Monday. This is working, right? Can you hear me?
So Jim Mundy, I just retired from the Union League of Philadelphia for 45 years, and as the club's historian. And for years, I would just kind of watch the buses go by on Broad Street, the carriages, everything else like that. And I would hear the story that Abraham Lincoln's body laid in state at the Union League of Philadelphia after the funeral train came to the city on April the 22nd. I'm going like, where the hell did they get that stuff? I mean, who could have made that up? And so I finally went to the trolley tour company and said, guys, you got it wrong. So for like 3 years in a row, I would give them tours of the Union League, and they were still saying the same damn thing. So so I guess my point is that what I find frustrating is that we can try and make things better. We can try and tell people what the actual history is, but there's nothing behind it to back it up. So, and I don't know how we solve that problem, but at least God only knows what the heck they're saying right now, but I'm sure it's just as bad. So those are just one of the issues that we face all the time, is how do you keep that misinformation from going further and further and further? So just so you know, Abraham Lincoln's body laid in state the Union League on April the 22nd. It did not lay in state in Independence Hall. That's a complete fabrication and all that kind of stuff. So thank you.
Does anyone else want to share anything? I think I have to talk like right into it like this. Anyone else?
In reference to what he was saying about giving us the tours at the Union League, the tour guides that took your tours are probably the tour guides that aren't here anymore. And that's why that information keeps getting wrong. Because the tour guide changeover is like, I work 1 day a week, and every time I come back to work, I see new people. I don't even know who the tour guides are anymore.
So again, the problem
Hi.
isn't the tour guides themselves; it's the people who manage the tour guides who don't insist that they actually get their history right. No, not at all.
No,
Sure,
no consequences.
exactly right. Thanks.
I said, and there's no consequences for those who do the wrong thing. Nobody's to stop them. Now, in 1976, I was one of those naive, stupid girls who got a job for the summer as a bicentennial tour guide. I had just graduated college, and it was for the summer. I was handed a script, and I learned it and repeated it over and over and over and over again. When I joined APT, and I learned the real facts of things, I was shocked, and I had to work really hard to reprogram my brain to do the right thing. So nobody, I can't even tell you who the business I worked for. It ended probably in October of that year, and thankfully, I have successfully forgotten all the wrong things. So I couldn't even tell you.
I would like to add a little bit. The gentleman with the bow tie, I love bow ties, by the way. I just didn't wear one this evening. But what you were pointing to was the lack of concern by the companies themselves, the people who manage it. One of the things that was one of the first things that Ed asked me, he says, well, what are you trying to start? Are you trying to start a union? And I said, absolutely not. I don't envision us going and fighting for wages or anything like that. It was all geared towards educational aspects to try to bring up the level of service that was provided for our guests. But one of the legal issues that had also come up had to do with the management of the companies, but also the fact that the city was not going to, well, like was being said, if the companies didn't really want to be involved in it, they could find an exemption. And that's where it crosses the law, because you have to have equal protection under the law. If you're going to test tour guides, then you test them all. And if you're not going to test them all, then you don't test any of them. And that is in one of the amendments. I forget which one. It may be the 14th. but it's equal protection under the law. So if you're going to do it for one, you do it to them all. So I'm glad that didn't come about anyway.
One thing that I see in looking around at so many people I've known for so long who really care about giving tours is a word that he used, and that's education. I think we see ourselves as educators, and it is our job to give correct information and to make it an enjoyable experience for people to take a tour. Unfortunately, when people get involved with this profession and do it from an entertainment standpoint, where they're trying to be funny and get the laughs and so forth. I'm not saying you can't do both, but very often they're not taking it seriously as an educator to want to make sure people walk away with some information. They won't remember everything, but some information that is correct and, makes them want to come back, hopefully. Um, I have this letter that Ed wrote, and I'm so sorry it's not dated, but it was to Honorable Michael A. Nutter, Mayor of Philadelphia. And he said, "Dear Mayor Nutter, prompted by recent wave of public concern for accurate city tours, 42 of the city's independent professional tour guides began meeting on August 21st. Our new our new Association Philadelphia Tour Guides Act has adopted the following goals: establish high standards for interpreting the city to its public, develop an effective training and continuing education program, act as a voice for members in matters which affect guiding." And APT members have also started to work on a tour guide basic book, and we have made preliminary selection of 128 historic sites, architectural treasures, public art, historic figures as topics, and it goes on. And I think this is what we have continued to be about, that we have fulfilled Ed's dream and those of us who felt it was necessary to join together and start the association. So thank you.
Guys, now I do so many tours
Ernest.
every day for everybody.
Ernest,
Yes.
we let Judy talk first.
Oh, go, Judy.
Thanks. Well, I want to, Ernest, you gave me a lot more credit than I was due because I didn't join the organization until 2014. You just think I've been around a lot longer, okay? But I just want to say something on kind of a different note. And again, going back to Nick. Nick, we all knew him. Many of us knew him. Kind of called him a curmudgeon. But if it wasn't for Nick, I probably wouldn't have ever joined. Um, I went to one meeting after picking up a brochure that was actually Nick's brochure over here in the visitor center, and I was intrigued because he did tours in German, and I like to think that I can speak a little German, so it intrigued me a little bit. And on the back it said about APT, and I went to the first meeting at Kavanaugh's, and I thought it was a bunch of, it was really tight. It wasn't easy to break into an association, and I thought, these people, they don't want an outsider, right? Um, so anyway, but again, my husband encouraged me, do this. So the next event was a tour at the African American Museum. So I went to it, and Nick was there. Back in those days, Nick was the photographer. And Nick, in his kind of curmudgeonly self, was like, now who are you? What's your background? What are you doing here? And I explained to him that I was about to retire and I was looking into, maybe being a tour guide. And he said, well, these people are, there's all different kinds of people here, but stick with it. And you just hang on to me today, which I did. I kind of just followed him around and we talked and we became friends, and the rest is history. So I just want to bring that out for all of us as an association. We need to always welcome new people. It's really hard to break in, but look where it got me. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I certainly am an active tour guide and been a big part of this association. So welcome you all, and I'm sure we have many, many great years ahead of us, and we have a great leader right now, Marianne. So kudos to everyone.
This kind of brings us in. I wanted to I know Brian had emailed me and said, well, we want to talk about, going forward, what are some things APT wants to do? And this might not be the best time because we're talking about the past. But if anyone has anything, just as a brainstorming session, if anyone has ideas for APT initiatives for 2025, 2026, beyond, especially 2026, if there are things that, I know on the board we had talked about maybe bringing back the Great Tour for 2026 and offering it, because it's been a couple of years now since we had it. But if there's any other ideas anyone has, you're free to bring it up now and just throw it out there, or you can email me or any of the board members. Here, Mike has his hand up.
Okay. There's one last thing with me, guys. There's been the number one misconception of all of these tourists that come here. Who is Pennsylvania actually named after? They do not know that answer. They do not know it's named. Oh, I give a prize on my tour for who gives the correct answer, because I know I ain't got to give it up. Because most of the people do not know. Yeah, I think I saw that one. They do not know that Pennsylvania is not named after William Penn. And that's the misconception that they have. And that tour that we took at the African American Museum, I was embarrassed because I was a docent at that museum at that time, and the machines and the video was not working for us. And I was very, very embarrassed about that situation because I wanted to show y'all the African American heritage of Philadelphia, because that Audacious Freedom tour is actually the Audacious Freedom exhibit is Philadelphia. It's the beginning of the history of Africans getting independence in America. But as I said, I was very, very embarrassed that the videos were not working when we came in there because they always on a timer or whatever. I'm sorry for that. I was very, very embarrassed, and I'm apologizing for them. All right, because it should have been better. That's my comment. All right.
Well, this is actually going to go back to something that was said earlier. One of my last jobs before I got into tourism was I was working for Blue Cross. I'm sure this group by now has over 100 members. If you have bylaws, if you have a constitution, you can possibly look into low-cost group health insurance for tour guides. You don't have to be a union. You can be an association and get involved in that too. And I know there have been one or two, especially in the horse and carriage area, where guys started having problems because they'd have physical issues and they wouldn't have anything. I remember my first year, he wasn't a horse and carriage driver, but he was a driver for the Tri-Works. Someone went up to the van and found him dead of a heart attack. So, and like you said, one of the reasons why a lot of people don't stay with this, beyond the fact that you make really good money from March to April, and then you're jumping into Burger King dumpsters, in the wintertime, is you don't have health insurance. And if you don't have health insurance, a stub toe could put you into bankruptcy. But that would be something that could possibly help some of the guys too.
Just to throw something out there, it was mentioned like a Jeopardy type thing. This might be something you might want to think of down the line, just an activity, a fun activity for the association to have, kind of like a Jeopardy type thing where people can show off and their knowledge of history, or like a trivia type thing. Did Okay? Well, did you? Congratulations.
Anyone else? Anything? Anyone else?
First of all, thank you for sharing this history because I'm relatively new. So it was very informative to find out how this came about with the right set of history. But also, I just wanted to let everybody know that we started out with 42 members, but now we have 36 corporate members and 137 individual members, as well as 5 lifetime members. So it's the most members we've had in the history of ATP. So, what's up? 170-ish, 177. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so make sure there's that yellow tablet, I think that's back there is for you to sign in. So if you didn't sign on it, please sign your name so we know you were here today. And if you were at, or even if you were not at Charlene's talk today at the president's house, she had a little packet that she handed out with handouts. So if you'd like to get that, she didn't have enough for everybody. So if you didn't get one, you can sign up. She'll send it to you. Or even if you weren't at the presentation and you want it, you could still sign up to get it. Maybe. Yeah, probably. Oh, Joe Beckton, did you want to talk? He just was waiting for an invitation.
Well, of course, many of you know I'm the loud guy. So I've been around doing tours for a long, long time. For maybe 30 years, I've been talking about this holiday that nobody knew about called Juneteenth, and then suddenly it exploded. So right now I'm in the middle of a lot of anxiety and a lot of worry and a lot of programming. So starting as early as Saturday morning, I'm going to be at Valley Forge. At Valley Forge, we put up a monument to the patriots of African descent. It's on Route 23. All right, so in the morning, about 9 o'clock, Delta Sigma Theta, the folks who constructed the monument, are having their annual meeting and celebration there at the monument. So I'll be there talking about African Revolutionary War soldiers that morning. That afternoon, I'll move to Ardmore. I'll change uniforms and be in a Civil War uniform talking about Juneteenth at the Vernon C. Young Park in Ardmore, right off Ardmore Avenue. So those are two things on one day. Of course, if you jump a few days later, Juneteenth itself, city holiday, national holiday, is on Wednesday. And my group, the Civil War Reenactment Group, the 3rd Regiment United States Color Troops, will be at the African American Museum. There's a big street festival. It's free. All right, I like that part. It's free. There'll be music, there'll be dancing, there'll be exhibits, and that's on Wednesday. Also, the regiment will be in Germantown on Saturday. So while I'm at Valley Forge, the regiment will be in Germantown at the Johnson House, 6300 Germantown Avenue, a big street festival for Juneteenth, which is also free. Come on, you guys. Come on. You can chime in whenever you know the answer, which is also free. And then when it comes to the 22nd, my special place that I've been working really hard on is Darby and Lansdowne. All right. I think the Darby's got this amazing history. Anybody who likes Friends and Quakers, you got to go and talk to those guys in Darby. The Darby meeting was essential. I'm trying to figure out how many of those Darby meeting guys ended up being the exiles. Remember when Henry? Yeah, remember when Henry was talking to us about the exiles? Yeah, I still can't find out how many exiles there were and exactly where they were from. But those connections are really, really big. So on the 22nd, I'll start at the Darby Library with my Juneteenth presentation. And then that afternoon in Lansdowne, in the middle of town, they call it the Landing. I don't know why, but it's the middle of the town, Lansdowne. And at the Landing, I'll be also speaking, and I have my whole family out My wife will come and play music with me. My brother will play music with me. My grandson will play music with me. I'm calling it the Becton's concert. So the 22nd, come on out. Guess what? And it's also, hey, thank you.
Charge for some of these. Make some money. Anyone else? Anyone else want to share anything? You have a mic.
This is now I have to put my heart where it is most, and that's City Hall. As those of you who know me know that I've retired, except one day a week when I give a tour. But the program, the guides, the taking people up to the tower, and the visitor center are all in very good hands of Tomar Jackson back there. And some of you have met Tomar. And I wanted to take this opportunity on behalf of Tomar, since I have the microphone. We could use more guides at City Hall. Plus, it is a volunteer situation, but everybody who does it, I think, did Elaine leave? Yeah, she's been coming in, even though it's hard for her to get around sometimes. But those of us who do it love it. Visitors from all over the world every day. It's a wonderful, phenomenal building. And if you want to have a really special experience, we're looking for people to run the elevator to take people up to the observation deck. And it's I've been doing now all those, oh, here comes Elaine, but all those years I worked it was run by public properties or the city, and they wouldn't let me run the elevator. Now I know how to lift the thing and so forth. But it's a very enjoyable experience to take people up and down and have 2 minutes going up and 2 minutes coming down to talk to people and so forth. So if you have any friends who are looking for something to do where they don't have to learn a lot of historical information, getting involved with the tower and the elevator could be a real fun thing to do. So I just want to say that. And there's Elaine. Elaine, I was saying how you still come in and love being at City Hall like I do. So, and oh, and Karen. Karen enjoys City Hall. And where's Antoinette's been doing a fabulous job. And wait, where's Bill? Ralph? I know Ralph. Bill, I don't know. We love it. So come join us. Thank you all for sitting patiently. And if you have any more questions, I have files like this of app things.
And I have some blue lanyards. If anybody, I know Charlene says she never got one. If anyone doesn't have a lanyard who is a member, I have extras today. I don't bring them every week, so get one today if you need one. Do you have a lanyard, Mr. Becton?